Hey, welcome World Entertainment, and we got Superman on the big screen, the first outing for the brand new DCU. We got Supergirl on the way next year, but what about Batman and Wonder Woman? Well, news is that yes, they are moving forward right now with Batman and Wonder Woman. Now, the Batman part is interesting because it's a little confusing in terms of what are they talking about Elseworlds Batman, aka Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, the Batman, or are they talking about Brave and the Bold? But when it comes to Wonder Woman, we had news that they're working on it, but now we're getting word they are fast tracking Wonder Woman, which is interesting. So, of course, Superman came out and it's done its numbers for its opening weekend. Not terrible, but definitely not great either, especially internationally, where for some reason over the weekend it just did not take off. But Zaslav has made statements and he's still talking, and this is where we get the hint that they're moving forward quickly enough anyway for Batman and Wonder Woman. So he was talking to the New York Times and he said this, he said, "We're having a hell of a lot of fun. We're on the attack." So he's saying DC is now basically, it's on the attack. But then he said this, "Our biggest strategic opportunity was that DC was underdeveloped. Now we have Gunn and Safran firing with a 10-year plan. Supergirl has already been shot. They're working on Wonder Woman. They're working on Batman." And he added, "I believe deeply and wholeheartedly in motion pictures. It's the purest, most exhilarating and most powerful storytelling in the world." So that last part is basically saying you gotta go and see this stuff on the big screen. Even though during the pandemic it was stay at home and order HBO Max and all that type of stuff. But they're saying as well that the studio does seem to have there's internal conversations of they weren't absolutely blown away by the start with Superman's numbers, but they feel it was good enough, which you will see when we get to this part where they're talking now about the whole Wonder Woman thing being fast-tracked. But what they say as well regarding Batman, and in this one in particular they're talking about Matt Reeves' Batman, is very interesting, especially when we go back to the Superman premiere and we see James Gunn's reaction to being asked that question of, hey, did you read Matt Reeves' script and what do you think? And he, of course, they threw out, is Batmite going to be in it? And he kind of laughed it off. But then he just gave that very sarcastic, very response when he went, yeah, it's great, and just walks off. But a Variety report says the first DCU movie's theatrical debut, its budget and the salaries paid to the cast and director, apparently James Gunn got $15 million for this. The trade notes that the refrain heard on the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank and around Hollywood was "good enough," accompanied by a sigh of relief as Gunn's movie lifted off to $220 million worldwide, ushering in a 10-year vision for DC. So you're hearing there on the DC lot, or the Warner Brothers lot, there's like that sigh of relief of, okay, at least worldwide it got to 220, but you're hearing them saying, look, the numbers, they're not fantastic, but they're good enough. They weren't terrible for us. So that's what that's talking about. But then it's saying, go one box office analyst views Superman's opening weekend haul as a slightly underwhelming start for DC and Warner Brothers. The studio clearly intends to forge ahead with plans for its Gods and Monsters slate and beyond. Slightly underwhelming, very underwhelming for the international, slightly I'd say for the domestic, because you would expect it of to being higher. But anyway, here's the interesting part. So it's saying, although Warner Brothers has sequel options on Corn Sweat and Brosnahan, a sequel announcement does not appear to be imminent. Instead, sources say the studio is fast-tracking a Wonder Woman movie. And get this part, and the studio is thrilled with Matt Reeves just submitted screenplay draft for the sequel to The Batman. So the first two big takeaways is that they're fast-tracking Wonder Woman, which is interesting why they're fast-tracking Wonder Woman and not Batman. But it's the fact that the studio is thrilled with the Batman Part 2. So whatever James Gunn's thoughts may be on it, it seems like he mightn't want to go against the grain if Warner Brothers themselves are saying, we love this script, get this in production. I don't think Gunn really is in a position to come out now and start going, well, I want it changed here and I want it changed there. It's going to be interesting to see, because the Batman Part 2 can cause James Gunn massive issues, being the fact that it's not his project and it was in place well before he was ever looked at to be the head of DC. So if this thing comes out and just destroys his movies, like Superman, whatever its final numbers end up being, if Batman Part 2 comes out and destroys them numbers, it's not a good look for James Gunn. It's interesting though, again, that they are fast tracking Wonder Woman. The speculation is out there of who could be cast, but there's been no announcements of writers or anything for Wonder Woman. We know they are still working on Paradise Lost, which won't feature Wonder Woman. It is meant to be set well before her time, but it's also going to be interesting to see what actually happens, because one of the things, and this could also be a big issue for the DCU, is the fact that a lot of the projects they're putting out now are actually R-rated stuff. So Creature Commandos was R-rated, Peacemaker is R-rated, Lanterns is going to be R-rated because Nathan Fillion has said he has dropped more F-bombs in this one role than he has done in any of his work. And Clayface, of course, will be coming, and that will be R-rated. Paradise Lost, if they're saying it's going to be basically Game of Thrones but on Themyscira, then you would assume it's probably going to be R-rated, but they're obviously not going to do an R-rated Wonder Woman movie. At least you would expect them not to do that. Stranger things have happened, but it's going to set up this weird thing of, hey kids, guess what? You get to watch this, but nothing else. And that could be very bad for the box office and the overall interest for the DCU. But again, the fact that they're fast tracking Wonder Woman leans heavily as well into the casting rumor of, what's her name, Adria, is it? Arjona? Speculate if she was the front runner, and James Gunn seems to be liking and following her on thing, and now it's being fast tracked. I think the indication is that she will be cast as Wonder Woman. Fine, whatever. It's the fact that the studio is thrilled with Matt Reeves, the Batman. Which again, if we go back to that original statement of they're working on Wonder Woman, they're working on Batman. That part, they're working on Batman. Which Batman though? Is he talking specifically about the Batman Part 2? Or is he talking about Batman Brave and the Bold? That part is interesting, and then you top it off with the studio is thrilled with Matt Reeves' Batman. So, again, that part is a little confusing, but it's interesting. So, we'll wait and see what happens, and if they're fast-tracking Wonder Woman, I would assume we'll get some announcement of casting shortly, and writers and whatnot, and it'll be interesting to see who he picks to direct this thing. So, we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open. And with that, do let me know what you think of all of this. Start that conversation in the comments, people. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. Like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.